guys, I'm here at Adepticon 2017 at the Anvil 8 Games booth, and we're going to be looking at a game called Aetherium, something we've had our eyes on actually for a very long time. So I'm here with Chris. Chris, good to see you.
Pleasure.
Now, you are one of the owners of Anvil 8,
Yep.
so you're in a unique position to tell me exactly what Anvil 8 Games is, how you guys kind of got your start, and how you find yourselves here at Adepticon at 2017.
I'd love to, and I know a lot of people who've heard our story, especially Adepticons. We always say this is our home ice because we're local to Chicago.
Nice.
So we've been doing this now for a couple of years, 4 years to be exact. So in 2013, we launched our Kickstarter for Aetherium. That's back when the Adepticon was at the Westin. We were in a little corner. We had a couple tables set up, and people loved it. And within a year, we had the game out, and then we had a booth at Adepticon. Following that was another Kickstarter with our first expansion pack. And then following that, we got that out in a year. And then here we are a year later, and our fourth faction is out. We didn't need to do a Kickstarter this time around.
Awesome.
So the game's kind of getting that momentum that we want. And, Adepticon's been nice enough to have us all these years. Brian, who's the other owner of the company, he has a lot of connections with some of the people here. He's worked a lot helping out with game tables and events and things like that. So, and I used to work for Games Workshop for almost 8 years. So I know a lot of the faces around here, Dave Taylor and some of those people.
Cool.
So this is kind of like one of our, our home turf and a big family of ours. We know a lot of people.
And did you get started with Aetherium? Is this basically your main release?
It is, yeah. I joke because I don't know if I'd ever recommend starting a company with a miniatures game. It's definitely one of the biggest beasts. But now that we've kind of gotten it down and out of the way, it's like any other game we even consider making seems way, way easier.
That's great, man.
There's a lot of moving parts when it comes to a miniatures game. But yeah, Brian approached me. I've known him for almost 15 years now. Met him through Games Workshop when I was an employee. And eventually one day he was like, I want to make my own game. I'm kind of tired of doing stuff for other people. I want to do something myself. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And I didn't really think much of it. He had me over one night, and he already had guys doing concept art. He had artists working on sculpts.
Wow.
He had a little bit of backstory. And
so
I was
he was pedal to the metal on
I was
this.
like, wow. So, I was expecting okay, here's a couple ideas on a napkin. And it was like, no, he was like, I want to do this. And he said, I want to make a company. And he's like, I want you to be my partner. And I was like, I'm in.
All right.
So we decided to do that. We brought in a couple of our friends to help out. And that group has changed a little bit over time. But, it's all been friends that have helped us out as far as building the game, the universe, and, art and sculpts and all that. We've worked with a lot of freelancers, a lot of professionals in the business, big names, small names, well-known, just out of college, everywhere in between. So, it's been a fun and exciting experience.
Well, let's dive into Aetherium. So this is, among a number of games here at Adepticon, a miniatures game that is looking to kind of do something different or unique. Tell me, what is it about Aetherium that you think drives players to this game?
I would say every time somebody plays this game, it's the tile moving mechanic.
Yeah.
When we first designed that was definitely one of the eureka moments of the game. It was like, wow, this is different, this is cool. The only thing I can really relate it to is if you play Warhammer, wood elves can move the forests around, which anybody knows in a game of Warhammer, just even moving a forest 2 inches can make a huge impact on the game.
Yeah.
Now imagine being able to restructure a huge chunk of the board. If you could take a chunk of your realm of battle, 2 by 2 and totally change it, everything's completely different. So that's what Aetherium does. And in the lore, you're in a digital world. The Aetherium is a virtual reality that's been somewhat discovered, somewhat created by humanity. And the blue mat represents the toxic part of the system called quantum noise, which is deadly to a user. It's static. It causes all sorts of interruptions to your connection. So as mankind developed the system, they build these tiles using the objectives called pylons and nodes to kind of spread more of an influence in the area. So now that that's been done, that will give you ways to rotate and move the tiles. The idea that you're a hacker or a user on the outside hacking into the system, manipulating, the world. We love to use the Inception reference of when Leo shows, Ellen Page how to bend the world on itself. It's kind of that same idea, And the more powerful your user is, the more the more you can manipulate the board and really have an impact on the game.
Wicked. Well, show me how this works. So what's a normal game of Aetherium look like?
So the mat is a little bit bigger. The mat's 29 by 29, so you lay that out, and depending on your scenario that you're playing, because it's all scenario based, you'll have a number of these tiles on the board. They come in 3 sizes, small, medium, and there's a bigger one that's a large one. Depending on the scenario, that'll tell you how or where you set them up and how many tiles you use.
Okay.
That'll also tell you how many objectives you set up. The pylons are the man-made ones. Generally, these start under your control and they act as your deployment zone. The big ones, which are nodes, are the ones that are discovered in the Aetherium. So these kind of make the real anchor that humanity finds and then builds out.
Oh, nice.
So sometimes these are big objectives. Other times, depending what the scenario is, the objective might be destroy the other units or get some vital information and download it and then escape off the server or things like that. So every mission is unique in how that kind of plays out. And with the board building and moving mechanics, the game really never is the same twice. Even if you play a map or a mission where the board is set up in the same way, because all the tiles are double-sided and you can orient them, and we have a different tile set too, you can really have something unique. This one here has got impassable terrain on 2 sides.
Wow, yeah.
But if I'm doing this scene, this one's way more open. So, having different calibrations like that can really change how that's laid out.
So can you run me through a normal turn of Aetherium?
Sure. So a typical game, you've got these cards here which represent your units. And your units represent programs that users on the outside are running or have programmed in the system. Some of them are automated. Others, it's a group of 5 people out in the real world manipulating, the server. In a normal game, you have 5 units, and they come in 3 different types. So you have your avatars, which are your generals and your named characters. They're the special personas. There's only one Mastrona in Aetherium.
Yeah.
Then you have your functions, which are your solos. Every time you play a game, you normally have 2 of them. So you'll have 2 of those programs. And then your subroutines are your squads. 2 to 5 models, and you will generally have 2 of those in your faction as well. So a total of 5 units. That makes a full game. No point values. If you want you want to use a different avatar, you just get that avatar and swap their card out.
Wow.
So very, very easy on the army building. It's more about learning synergies and things like that.
Yeah.
So, depending on the mission, this is obviously a game in progress right here, but the game uses alternating activations. So you will have 1 card for every unit in your faction, and at the start of the game, you will organize this in whatever order you want to have your units activate, all right?
Okay,
so right now, obviously we're doing a demo here, not a big deal, but based on what your units do or how they work, that might play into part of the strategy of the game.
So we kind of are going to secretly determine our order of operations here.
Yes.
So I want this person and then this. So let's do something like that.
And as the battle goes on, in late game and mid game, it also becomes a guessing game of what do I think my opponent's going to do? Do I try to go after this unit that I could kill, or do I think this unit's going to activate next and be a bigger threat?
Yeah.
So how do I deal with that? So, I would, depending who goes first, I'll draw my first card here, all right? And once I finish this unit, then you're going to draw yours, and we just alternate turns. So
perfect.
That helps keep players engaged. In a lot of miniature games, you do your whole turn, which, big games, you might be doing that for 30, 40 minutes.
Yeah.
And all you get to do, your opponent does, is take all of his models as you kill them.
Yeah.
Which is fun to some degree, but sometimes not so much. So this helps keep players engaged. Once you know the rules, turns are really quick. So Aetherium uses an action point-based system. If you're familiar with games like Space Hulk or any sort of action point universe, that's what this number in the top corner here is, your CS.
Okay.
That's your cycle speed. So in this case, avatars, they're the most powerful units. They have 6 action points.
Nice.
And you use that to either move, capture objectives, or on the back of your card, you have what are called .exes, your executables.
Okay.
A lot of those will have a CS cost associated with them, or they may be passive as well.
Nice.
Now you can do those in any order, or as long as you have the CS to do it. So I've activated her. I've got 6 CS. Now ultimately, I want to get her to this tile, and I'm going to try to capture this. All right. So I can spend 1 CS to move. All right. But I don't want to jump into the quantum noise here because this can really damage your units. It can even outright delete them. So that's where our resources come into play. Your avatars, objectives you capture, and units that get deleted give you RAM in the game. And RAM, normally there's a bigger tile here, but for the demo we've got just this little board here. So I'm keeping track of my RAM there. I've got 4 for a variety of reasons, all right?
So when you lose a unit, you gain RAM?
As long as it's not your avatar, because if your avatar dies, much like in Hordes or War Machines, your caster dies, you don't have their focus or fury.
Yeah.
Same thing here. If your avatar dies, so she grants me 3. If she died, I would drop down to 1 immediately.
I see. So it's a bit of a catch-up mechanic in that way then, right?
Yes.
As you're losing things, you're gaining essentially RAM or energy.
But if your other units die, the functions or the subroutines, your processor frees up and has less stuff to run, so it goes faster.
Right.
So if you lose a function, you immediately gain 2 RAM. If you lose a subroutine, you immediately gain 1 RAM.
Cool.
And that helps because manipulating the board, especially based on your army composition, can sometimes be a really big advantage.
Yeah.
So here, I don't want Mastrona to take that damage. I'm going to spend 1 RAM, and I can rotate or move a tile. So it's a 1-to-1 basis to move any tile of any size. The only restriction is you can't move a tile that your opponent controls. To control a tile, there has to be one of the objective markers on it, and you have to control it, which you do on these 2 right now.
I see.
So I can't mess with those, so you've locked down that part of the server. But I've got this one, so I'm going to move this 1 square, and I can move diagonal. That's fine, all right? Now, this terrain right here is impassable. The way we do terrain, there's symbols on the cards that show what that space is. So in this case, we've got an X that's impassable terrain. I can't walk through the burning barrel. I've got to go around it. Well, I don't want to waste her actions to do that, so I'm going to spend another point of RAM, all right? And now I can move diagonal right there.
Right.
So at this point, I've only moved her 2 spaces, even though she's really moved 3 or 4 spaces across the board.
Cool.
All right? Now, she's adjacent to the pylon. It normally takes 3 action points to capture it, but because you control it, I have to break down your security measures, so it takes 1 extra action point. It's going to take a total of 4. I have 4 left, so I'm just going to flip that over to show that I've captured it. She has no CS left at this point. I'll try to make an attack. Now, attacking doesn't take any CS. Most models in the game, they can make 1 attack per turn. So in Mastrona's case, she has a ranged attack of 3, which we see right here. Some units it'll say melee. And then all of her information for making attack is right here. So normally when you roll the dice, you're going to roll our custom dice here. You got to try to match the symbols on your card. The more symbols you match, the higher you go up your damage threshold chain.
I see.
So if I get 1 success, I'll do the first number, 2 successes, so on and so forth.
Nice.
So in her case, she doesn't do much damage, but in the case of like the Grenadier, he starts at a 3 where her max is only a 3.
Wow, yeah.
So we'll see what happens here. All right, I'm going to roll my 3 dice. I'm going to attack this Riot Girl right here. And not a terrible roll, all right? So we're going to check this out, all right? There's 5 different symbols on the dice. 4 of them are facings, and the 5th one is this little gear symbol, which we'll talk about in a second. So if we match up the dice here, I've rolled this symbol twice. It's called a switch. And I've rolled the lightning bolt once, which we call a short. So I've gotten 2 successes, which means I'm going to do my second threshold, which is 2 damage, all right? Now, the other thing I've done is I've rolled 2 of these gears. If we look at her ability, relocate, I only need 1 gear to trigger this.
Okay.
So that's going to trigger, that's called the disruption effect, and that does an additional ability. In her case, the target model, I can place it anywhere on the tile that I'm on once I deal the damage. So I'm going to go ahead and put the Riot Girl over here in the corner, and you would go ahead and mark your damage on the grid here. Cards are already pre-laminated, so they're wet and dry erase friendly.
Nice.
You don't need to sleeve them if you don't want to. Now, the one thing, though, that I didn't show you is every time you're attacked, you're going to take your card and flip that over, because at the bottom of your card, you have what's called a safeguard. Safeguards are defensive powers that trigger when you are attacked by an enemy. This is another way we keep players engaged, because you have to tell me what's going on, and a lot of times they let you do things to the board or add status effects or move around. So even when you're getting your teeth kicked in, there's at least something you can sort of do in retaliation.
All right.
So in this case, I did things a little out of order. Why don't you go ahead and read what that says?
Hard to hit before making the attack. The attacking model rolls 1 less combat dice.
All right, so in actuality, I would actually only roll 2 dice for this attack. So we'll do that again. We'll put her back where she was. All right. And all right, so it actually pays off. I've only got 1 success this time. I only do 1 damage, but I still triggered my disruption. I'm going to throw her here in the corner because I want her as far away as possible.
Nice. Okay. Makes sense.
So now you would go ahead. I've got nothing else to do. Go ahead and draw your card.
Let's just see what Riot Girls can do, right?
All right.
So this is the subroutine. This is kind of the lowest level unit that I have.
Yes.
So I'm going to pull that out here.
All
got
right.
a 135 on the damage, so
Now,
looks like
First
high
thing we
risk,
want
high
to look
reward.
at with the Riot Girls, when it comes to subroutines, they come in two types. The Riot Girls here are a segmented program, whereas the Praetorians are a linked program. The number after that indicates how many models there are. Segmented programs, one might argue, are better because each Riot Girl activates and operates independently during the game.
Nice.
They can each move, they each have 4 CS, they can each make 1 attack, they can each do whatever they want. Whereas the Praetorians move together as a group, but they have benefits that come to that as well. So we'll check out the Riot Girls here. What you're going to do, Steve, is you're going to pick one Riot Girl, you're going to completely do her activation, and then you're going to move on to the next one.
All right, so let's start out with this one right here.
Okay.
I'm going to choose this, and I'm gonna look, and I'm looking for basically what kind of, they've got a melee weapon and then a ranged weapon with the highly illegal weapons.
Now, in the case of the Riot Girls, they're one of the few units that can do both melee and range. That's one of their advantages.
Well, let's just come up here and do a melee attack. So I'm gonna activate here, and I've got 4 points. So 1, 2, 3.
Yep.
That's gonna put me next to this in case I want to activate it or mess around with it, and then I'm gonna make an attack.
Yep, and obviously for a melee attack, you have to be adjacent to the target.
Yeah.
Now, if she was diagonal, that also counts as adjacent.
Nice.
So that's one thing a lot of people, if you're not used to a grid system, the diagonal movement is a great way to skirt around terrain or other hazards you got to really get used to. So you're gonna go ahead and roll 3 dice.
All right. And so any of these 3 symbols equals a success for me?
Correct.
All right.
Riot Girls have a nice spread of their symbols, so they're usually pretty reliable. Let's see what you got.
Do you have any safeguards I need to worry about?
Yes, we do, so good call. So Mastrona's Safeguard, which is called Badge of Office, changes all of these symbols to the disruption symbol.
Oh.
So it makes her a lot harder to hit.
So now I'm just looking for the gears.
Yep, so their symbols don't matter. All right, but you still rolled pretty well.
2 gears.
You've gotten 2 gears. Now, if you'd like, you can trigger their ability here, their disruption power.
After rolling the combat dice before damage is applied, I may reroll all of its. I don't want to reroll all my combat dice.
Okay,
I'm
I
happy
wouldn't
with
either.
that
That's
roll.
a good roll. So she would take 3 damage. So we got 2 successes. So I'd mark off 3 damage on her with our marker here.
Nice.
All right? And so that's a quarter of her health. She's only got 12.
That's happening
all right?
pretty quick there.
And then I did 1 damage to the green one. All right. Another benefit of segmented programs, you notice on their card they have these separate chunks of health that are different colors.
Oh, right, okay.
That's how you keep track of individual models. Now, because they're a segmented program, each model has its own little health pool. So if I nuke one Riot Girl for 10 damage, that extra damage doesn't spill over, it just kills that one Riot Girl.
Right.
But you have to keep track of who has what health.
Right.
Now, if that was a linked program, that damage will spill over until a model dies. But we'll get to that later. So that Riot Girl's attack, she has 1 CS remaining if you want to do anything with it.
I actually am going to... Ooh, I was going to take a move. Is there anything I can do with this CS aside from moving? Is it
move,
abilities?
You can try to capture this. You can use an ability. Now, her ability is not going to help at all. It only costs 1 to trigger. But what it allows her to do is ignore difficult terrain and another thing called evasive movement, which is where you move away from enemy models.
Okay. So I can try to capture this?
It would take 4, because remember, it's 3 to capture the pylon, and since I control it, it's 1 extra now.
Okay, and I don't have that left at all.
You don't have that much, and now the other thing you can do with your RAM, all right, your resources, you can overclock your model. You should be at 4 right now.
Let's assume we got a 4, yeah.
Right. Now, this other number up in the corner of their card is called overclock.
Oh,
right?
I see.
So every time I spend a point of RAM on that unit, it gives them an extra point of CS. And that's the maximum number I can give to her.
I see.
But even if you boosted her up now, she'd only be up to 3, and you need 4 to capture this. So boosting her right now is not going to do you any good.
All right, I've got an idea.
All right.
All right, so next we're going to activate here.
Okay.
I've got 4 here. Do I have to overclock? Can I do that whenever I want?
Whenever you want,
Okay.
Yep.
So let's do 1, 2, 3, 4.
All right.
You might think I'm just going to do an attack, but I'm certainly not. I'm going to overclock here.
Okay.
And let's just set up for something nice next turn. So I'm going to move 2 more points
Okay.
with my 2 overclock there. And now I'm going to make an attack against this thing.
Okay, that's the Grenadier hanging out in the back, so go ahead and make your roll.
have highly legal weapons, range 4, and that's counted diagonals, however you want to get there.
Yep, so in this case, you're 2 spaces away. Now, the Grenadier Safeguard, he's going to drop a flashbang at you after you attack him.
Oh, no.
You're going to suffer from what's called stun, which is one of our status effects. I don't have a token here. But what stun does is on your next turn, you cannot make an attack.
All right.
So she's too blinded next turn, but she can still do stuff this round.
All right, so 3 dice.
All right.
Coming at you, and I'm still looking for the same symbols, right?
Yep, he doesn't change your symbols. All right, wow, perfect roll and 3 disruptions, so no need to re-roll there. Big money, big prizes, so the Grenadier takes 5 damage, which is about a third of his health. So
nice.
A pretty big hit there.
All right.
All right.
And now let's do something saucy. We're going to activate here. I'm going to spend a ram to move here.
All right.
And then I'm going to, now this is impassable, or is this like hazardous terrain?
This is difficult terrain with the little squiggle symbol, so that takes 2 action points to enter instead of 1.
All right.
All right.
So let's do 1, 2,
Yep.
3. Now, can I shoot around a corner at these guys?
Yes, you can, absolutely.
Let's just do that.
All right.
So that would be 1, 2, 3, 4.
You're in
counting.
range. Yep.
All right, so I'm in range. I'm going to roll the same roll, 3 dice.
All right, now the Praetorians, their safeguard is very simple. They reduce all damage they take by 2.
All right, well, that's
All
easy
that
enough.
armor and shields.
Looks like
I didn't even see which one we rolled.
right here.
Those? Okay.
These 3.
All right. So we've got 2 successes, so it's going to be 3 damage. Unfortunately, no disruption, so you can't re-roll. And I reduced the damage by 2, so they only take 1
Take
point of
1,
damage.
tough.
All right?
Look at
Now,
these tough guys.
Because they are a linked program, just like the Riot Girls, they have segmented bars of health. When a linked program takes damage, I have to fill 1 color completely before I go to the next one. And once I fill 1, that deletes a model of my choice.
I see. Nice.
So not much done there. That's probably it for the Riot Girls.
Yep, that's going to be it.
I would go ahead and draw my next unit, which is going to be the Grenadier. All right.
So now we've got a showdown going on over here.
Yeah. So what I'm going to try to do is get behind her, because if you can attack somebody from behind, you can get to roll an extra dice. So I'm going to go 2 into the terrain, 3, 4, 5. He's got 5 action points. Now, since I'm behind, because you're facing this way, since I'm behind you, I get to roll an extra dice when I attack.
Nice.
So
okay.
Hopefully, get a little bit of a better result here. So let's see if I can get a nice roll. And I think that's going to do it for that right. Oh, I'm supposed to roll 1 less dice.
1 less die.
So we're breaking even.
You are hard to hit.
All right, so definitely good idea to do. And unfortunately, he rolls like a punk and only gets 1 success. So good job. I shoot a grenade at a girl in a t-shirt and I can't kill her. So she's going to take 3 damage. All right, so you'd mark that off. Now she has not been damaged yet.
She's the blue.
One.
Okay,
right.
1, 2, 3.
All right, so helps a little bit there. I've got nothing else I really want to do with him, although what I am going to do, on the back of his card, I'm going to use his doc executable, which is called Smoke Grenade. It takes 2 CS. Actually, no, I can't do this because I don't have. I was going to overclock him.
Let's pretend that you do have 2 CS. I want to see what this grenade does.
Okay, so let's say his overclock was 2. I was going to spend 2 of my RAM to overclock him. Give me 2 CS so I can drop down a Smoke Grenade. So I throw a Smoke Grenade within 5 squares. I'm actually going to do this and put it in the quantum noise.
In the ether.
And what this does now is anybody in my force that's adjacent to this token gets cover. Cover is just like the Riot Girls Safeguard. It's -1 dice. And I want to make sure that he's in the effect, so I'm going to spend my last RAM to move this. So now they're both in that cloud effect from the Smoke Grenade.
Nice.
Now, obviously, you could move that and change that if you capture one of these, but I think for now it's a pretty good idea.
Wicked. So technically, I couldn't have moved this because you controlled it, right?
Correct. Yeah. So we messed that up.
But I loved it
right.
so much. It was incredibly fun. So Chris, tell me this. We talked about kind of maybe the differentiating factor is the terrain movement, which very clearly is one of the cooler things that I've seen. Of any game, really, of miniature. It feels so, the freedom that allows you is cool. It feels like you're kind of surfing in cyberspace.
And imagine if we had the RAM to do this and rotate this whole thing, right?
It just changes immediately.
I mean, let's say you're running up here, you're about to capture this. I'm gonna be like, you know what? I'm gonna turn this, and now that objective is way harder to reach, especially with all this terrain and models in the way. Or, I could also, depending what the RAM situation is, I might be able to just boat this out of the way, and now it's like, well, do you spend your RAM to chase me?
Yeah.
Especially if I have the RAM advantage, I might have a little bit more playroom to kind of make you waste your RAM frivolously and still have a little bit to do what I want.
So as owner/game designer, co-owner, say /game designer/guy, they'd seen this grow from the bottom up. What is the one thing that you enjoy most about the whole Aetherium experience?
I really like throwing guys in the quantum noise.
Yeah.
Not everybody can do it, but when it happens, the chance of somebody dying is a 1 in 12 because there's only one skull on the dice. But when you get that, even if it happens to you, it's still kind of cool. And we did actually have it happen in a turn 1 on a guy that had a full 20 health unit, and it was just like, all right, well, you know. So that game quickly spiraled out of control. That's really fun. The new faction plays with the quantum noise in a way the other factions don't. They have a lot of units that can actually enter the noise and reduce the damage or traverse it without getting hit.
Really?
They've also figured out ways to weaponize the noise, so a lot of their units do extra damage in little incremental amounts, but they do random amounts of damage on top of what they normally do if they're manipulating the noise in the right way. So, for example, they have a large model that if he's next to the quantum noise when he attacks, he has the ability to basically harness that energy into his weapon and then do more damage after he smashes you.
Wow.
So, that's cool. And the tile moving mechanic is really cool, too, because it just, I think when I play, I'm pretty good at seeing a lot of those openings.
Yeah.
I tend to be pretty methodical when I play. And the other guys will tell you a lot of times my turns can take a little bit longer because I'm trying to really think like, okay, 2-3 turns ahead. Okay, this guy might get killed right now, but if I have enough RAM to do what I want to do, I can really blow some minds, and then they're like, how do I react?
That's so fascinating.
So if you can get good at manipulating the tiles or using units that manipulate tiles, because there's some units that can do things too. The Nanime have an avatar who at the start of his turn has to rotate the tile he's on.
Wow.
Which can be really good because rotating tiles is so expensive. But if you're not prepared to do that, you might throw all your own guys. So a lot of times when we see him in a game, all the units are facing the wrong way to start because the start of the game, the whole tile's going to turn anyway.
Flip it over. That's so cool.
Or they start back here, facing like this. And they're like, why are your guys facing backwards? Then it's like, well, at the start of my turn, I do this, and now I'm right up in your face.
Wow, that is so cool.
So, but you got to be careful because at the same time, you're like, okay, my guys are going to attack. Oh, wait, no, they're not. Now they're all the way on the other side of the tile.
Well, Chris, this is super cool. All the best wishes for Anvil 8 and Aetherium. Thank you so much for taking the time to demo this to us.
Appreciate it.
So this is Aetherium, Anvil 8 Games. Looks incredibly cool, especially for any of our Netrunner fans out there. This feels super cyberpunk and sci-fi and just like literally the feeling of surfing through the ether. Very cool.
A lot of comparisons to if you're a Netrunner or Shadowrun fan, the cyberpunk. A lot of people say, like, there really isn't like a cyberpunk board game out there, but this kind of seems to fill that niche.
It's a really cool niche.
It's cool. It's fun.
All right, guys, so check it out, Aetherium.